Hey chums, and welcome back to another video. Now you might recall last year at some point I bought the Trixie doll from Integrity Toys, and I asked on Instagram and on Facebook and on here whether we should turn this into a doll cake. Instagram said yes, Facebook said no, and YouTube were kind of split down the middle, and I didn't know what to do.
I said yes.
Well, of course you did. But one of you, I think, suggested that we should just recreate the whole thing as cake, and therefore we could leave the doll untouched in the box. I'll be honest with you, I don't really like making dolls. I'm not very good at it, but I know somebody who is. This lady here. So if you don't know, this is Zoe from Zoe's Fancy Cakes, who has an absolutely phenomenal YouTube channel, which I will link down in the comments. And today we are going to be creating the ultimate Trixie doll cake. Let's get started. So basically, just to get you all caught up, this is the Trixie doll from Integrity Toys, which came out last year. I bought it to turn it into a doll cake, and the internet told me I shouldn't because it will be worth loads of money one day, and therefore I should keep it pristine in box. But obviously I know that you make absolutely incredible dolls.
Oh, thanks.
So I figured if we combine our efforts,
Yes.
you can make a Trixie doll, I can make
The skirt.
the cake part,
Yep.
and then we'll bring it together to make the ultimate Trixie doll cake.
Sounds like a plan.
I have no idea where we're going to start with this because there's so much to it.
It's okay, I do.
Okay, cool.
We're going to start with her head and her body.
Uh-huh.
We're going to cheat a little bit.
Right.
Because as you know, you've got some of my molds.
I have got your molds.
So we're going to use some molds to help us with this one, and then you can do all the skirt bit. And I love these little white boots. But they are going on the skirt. She won't have those. So it's, I think, full length.
Yeah, so Trixie, for those of you who don't know, by the way, Trixie Mattel is a world famous drag queen with a passion for makeup artistry. She's kind of like probably one of the most famous drag queens there is now. So she was on RuPaul's Drag Race Season 7. She was on RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars 3, which she won. She hosts a show on Netflix called Queens Who Like to Watch. She has a show on YouTube called She has her own YouTube channel. She has her own makeup line. She's basically
Motel.
huge. Trixie's Motel. And she's very much inspired by Barbie. She's inspired by like 60s mod culture. And as such, she often wears little 60s style dresses. What she doesn't do
Flower power.
is wear ball gowns. So
Apart from today,
I've done a bit of research, and I think I found 2 photos of her wearing full-length dresses, neither of which are big ball gowns, but I figured we can almost play on the kind of late 60s, early 70s maxi dress style. So basically extending this dress into like a big, nice full-length one. So you've got some stuff ready for us, haven't you?
I have.
From your shop, Zoe's Fancy Cakes. So what have we got?
So we've got some pink icing. This is the new one. You'll be able to tell me more about the new one.
So this is the new formula from Renshaw called Just Roll With It, and we absolutely love this because it's a lot more forgiving than the original recipe Ready to Roll icing. So if you're somebody who's tried Renshaw and found it a little bit too soft to work with, I highly recommend you give this a go because we did loads of work to get this formula perfect. I use it with the kids at the school all the time. They absolutely love it too.
Oh, okay.
And as you say, we're going to use that to try and recreate this pattern on the dress. So it kind of has like the pink base, and then it's got yellow flowers over the top, and then over the top of that, it's got the kind of the white and the red details. So that's going to be our base coat.
So we've got a collection of molds. So we were looking, because obviously I have like male and female molds, but the doll is obviously more female shaped. So I think we're going to be better using the large female molds.
Yeah, because we had a whole big conversation because, of course, Trixie Mattel is Brian Furcus in drag. So we were like, do we start with a male mold and then drag it up, which I think would be a really fun video in itself. But because we are recreating the doll, and the doll is a girl doll, we're going to go with a female mold, aren't we?
Yeah, the doll has definitely got boobs.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, so I think
that's the first time boobs have ever been mentioned on my YouTube channel, so thank you for that.
So same again with the face. I think we'll use a larger face. Maybe I'll print up one of each and you can decide which one you like best.
Cool. And for those of you watching at home, we have seen these before because I think I've done a couple of videos where we did my gift ideas for cake decorators and things, and I think we've used your molds in those before. But if you fancy trying them for yourself, I will put a link to Zoe's online shop down in the video description.
Yeah, and then we're gonna also use a mold for the hair,
which I haven't played with yet, so I'm quite excited about that one.
They're very popular actually, these ones. I would say the wavy one's the best selling.
That's quite hard to do by hand, isn't it? So I can see why.
It definitely speeds things up. Right, so let's get started.
Time for a voiceover, I think, and we started by baking 2 cakes, one using the Wilton doll mould and one extra just round cake to give us the height that we wanted. Once that was done, it was time to start using Zoe's line of moulds to create the torso and the heads. Now, I've actually never used the actual torso and all the extra bits that go with it before, and Zoe really gave some excellent advice about how to use them. If I'd included it in this video, it would have ended up being about 4 hours long, so if you would like me to upload a second video using all of the footage in real time with Zoe's excellent tips and advice, then do let me know and I can do that for you. Once we'd filled the torso mould, we popped that in the fridge for a few minutes to start to set while we moved on to the heads, and you can see we're using some small polystyrene balls inside the heads for 2 reasons. One is going to make them a little bit lighter, but it's also going to give us something secure to push our cocktail sticks into when we're building the head and body together, and that's just going to make life a little bit easier for us. You don't have to do that, but if you've got them, you might as well use them. Again, Zoe gave me so many tips also about how to remove these moulded items from the moulds without kind of damaging the impressions that's left on them, whether that's like on the faces with the noses and mouths. So again, if you would like to see more of that, then do let me know and I can always arrange for that second video to happen in a few weeks. I also like the fact that she rests the head on the mould once she's pulled it out so that it doesn't flatten the back. I thought that was quite clever. But once we'd unmoulded everything, we set them aside to dry and it was time to start working on the actual cake. Now you'll notice I forced Zoe to tort it into layers, mainly because I was sure that if anyone was going to cut themselves live on camera, it would be me. But then it was time for me to step in and actually do some work to assemble this cake. Now all I'm doing here is filling it with a very simple vanilla buttercream that we've coloured pink because obviously. And actually I've included loads of footage for this and I have no idea why, because once you've watched me do it once, it's very much the same thing over and over again. But I will draw your attention to the fact that I constantly get down to the height of the cake just to check everything is in line and neat. The neater your cake is to start with, the easier your life will be when you come to do the crumb coat, which is what I'm doing now. And the crumb coat is purely just to seal in all of those crumbs and make sure we've got a nice smooth surface to go on to decorate. To help you get a really neat finish, you can use a flexible smoother like the green one you can see me using. That's just going to make sure it's nice and perfect and flat. And then you saw Zoe there pop a straw down the centre to make sure that we knew where the body was going to attach when it was all done. Next, it was time to cover the cake with our Renshaw Just Roll With It in baby pink. And then I spent some time making sure it was really neat and tidy. And when I say I spent some time, I really did spend a lot of time because I'm a bit of a perfectionist in case you haven't noticed just yet. So once I've smoothed it with the normal fondant smoother, we're in with another flexi smoother. And again, if you don't have these, by the way, they are absolutely fantastic for smoothing both buttercream, ganache, you're ready to roll icing, they are brilliant. But anyway, when I eventually was happy with what I'd done, it was time to add the torso. And you'll notice I step in just to give some constructive criticism. And then we kind of went our separate ways while Zoe carried on working on the dress, this time for the torso, while I started making the 4,392 flowers we were going to need to create the floral pattern. I was very impressed with the fact that Zoe free-handed this entirely just from a piece of icing. I say that because this is the first I'm seeing of it, really, because I was so in the zone making my trillions of flowers. And I'm just using the PME Daisy Cutter set, so I think it's a set of 4. in a variety of different sizes. So I started off just cutting out loads of yellow flowers, and then later on you'll see me start to do white ones and red ones as well. So we very kindly started attaching these to the cake for me, and it was at this point we realised just how many we were going to need. We had talked about painting the cake, but I felt that this was probably going to give us the best finish and the best recreation of the pattern on the box and of course on the dress. But anyway, that's enough of that for now, because believe me, I've got plenty of footage of making flowers. But now it's time for Zoe to do the bit that I very much wanted her to do. This is kind of the number one reason why I asked her to help with this project, if I'm honest, because she is fantastic at all this really kind of miniature, minute work on the dolls that she makes already. So I knew if anyone was going to do justice to Trixie's signature makeup look, it was going to be Zoe. Now, you can see she started with the female face mold, or molded female face, however you want to say it, and she's using edible marker pens to do kind of like the more distinctive line work, so things like Trixie's liner, both white and black, her lip liner and so on. And then to do kind of the more softer elements, so things like contour, blush, where Trixie blends different foundations, she's using these palettes of edible food powder colouring. Now, every now and then you'll see my hand pops in as I offer some advice, because I think I have watched pretty much every makeup tutorial Trixie has ever uploaded to the internet. But Zoe, in fairness, since we decided to do this video together, has been watching lots of Trixie's content too. So she has some really good understanding of what needed to happen and where to make this come to life. Now, between you and me, ultimately we decided to go with the male face mold in the end. So I've included more footage of that than of the female face, just because that's the one that ends up going on the cake. But what's really interesting to compare the two is almost how Zoe had already learned from what she did on the female face to help her do, I don't want to say a better job of the male face, but it came together a lot better. Coming up is the one time I actually stepped in and did something. So I've slowed the video down to real time so you can see, and that's it. Yep, that's all I did in terms of the makeup, other than offer lots of constructive advice. Now, we decided at this point that rather than try and copy the doll, we would actually copy the photo of Trixie's actual makeup, because the doll very much does have kind of a typical Barbie face painted to look like Trixie, whereas because we are dragging up a male face, we thought we would do things a bit more kind of true to how Trixie does her makeup. And as I say, we'd both watched enough tutorials, so you know, it was time to put it to good use. I was really impressed with how Zoe did the eyebrows. Even Trixie struggles with those, so I think Zoe did a great job. And obviously we couldn't forget that iconic nose contour. So I think it was at this point that we decided that this was definitely the one we were going to go with. And then I very much stepped in to kind of provide a bit of control while Zoe did the cheek contour, which is very much an iconic part of Trixie's look. In fact, I don't think my hand stays out of shot very much at all for the next couple of minutes. What can I say, I'm a bit of a control freak. Now, I did suggest that she do what Trixie does, which is put a small piece of card against the cheek to help get that really straight line on the bottom of the cheek contour. But ultimately, Zoe decided to just go for a really fine brush instead, which did the job too. So, you know, Trixie, there's a tip, perhaps if you want to try that. I have included pretty much all of the footage of this, by the way, so apologies if you're not particularly interested, but I just thought this is very much what brought this whole cake to life, was the fantastic job that Zoe did of the makeup. So I wanted to include it all. And again, do head to the comments and tell her what a fantastic job she did do, because, you know, so many people have done Trixie's makeup online, but I really do think that Zoe smashed it, bearing in mind she is doing it on something that's roughly the size of a golf ball, if not smaller. Once we were kind of at a point that we were both really happy with things, Zoe added in some eyeballs, which are obviously quite important, and then also the irises and the pupils. Oh, and a couple of catch lights too. And then it was time for eyelashes. And again, if you're not familiar with Trixie, Trixie has absolutely enormous eyelashes. She stacks up multiple pairs to make them absolutely enormous. And so we felt probably the best way to achieve this was to use real false eyelashes. This is the only part of the entire cake that isn't edible, but once you see them on, I think you'll agree they were the perfect finishing touch for this face and for this makeup look. We stuck them on with piping gel, by the way, so if you're somebody who struggles to stick on false lashes, maybe that's something you could try as well. But anyway, then it was time to make more flowers while we let that dry for a bit. So you can see we're now adding the kind of the more complex ones, the ones that have got the red, the white, the yellow in various different combinations. And if you look very closely, you can see the side of the box in the background, which is what we're trying to replicate on this cake. Then it was time for another little break from flowers while we added the head to the cake. You can see that Zoe's very much doing that part. This was not something I wanted to get involved in at all. Between you and I did actually swipe the female face off its mould and nearly onto the floor at one point, so my clumsiness was not needed at this point. Then I carried on making and attaching even more flowers while Zoe moved on to the arms. And by the way, her mould sets include the torso, the arms and the legs, so you can build the whole doll just using one set of moulds. So she's moulding those arms as I speak, and then once she'd done that, she went back to the Renshaw Just Roll With It icing in pink to make the sleeves. Now, we went through a lot of discussion to decide what position the arms should be in. We were talking about whether we should do one hand against the face, but then we figured it would hide the makeup that Zoe had spent ages painting. We talked about whether we should have made a guitar, but then we weren't sure it would fit against the much fuller dress. So in the end, we did decide to just go for kind of a nice out, simple position. And you can see Zoe used a little bit of wire just to make sure those were nice and firmly attached, simply because this cake was coming home with me once we'd finished, and we didn't want to run the risk of the arms falling off en route. I seem to have disappeared at this point, so clearly I've gone for a rest while Zoe is starting to work on the hair. And again, she's using one of her moulds. This is the wavy mould, and this allows you to create loads of different shapes of hair that you can then use in combination to add hair to your models. I don't think she's ever quite used this much on one model before, but again, Trixie is known for her huge wigs, so that's why we had to add so much hair. Oh, I'm back, and guess what? I'm making more flowers. So I'm starting to cover the back now, because as you can see, it is still looking incredibly bare. So loads more flowers to be done, but also loads more hair to be done. So we're very much working in tandem at this point. I do think I kind of come in for a bit more advice. There we go. Anything to get out of doing flowers for a couple of seconds, and then it's back to flowers again. I think now it is pretty much just a case of flowers, flowers, flowers until the end now. So we've hidden the doll so that you can't see kind of the finished result until we're ready for you to. But there you are. That is the full reveal of our Trixie Mattel doll cake. You'll have to head down to the comments and let us know what you think.
So there we go. What do you think, everyone? This is our doll cake of the iconic Miss Trixie Mattel. We'd love to know what you think of it, obviously, because you were the ones who told us that we should make it entirely from scratch, so that's what we've done. I have to say a huge, huge, huge thank you to Zoe and to Richard for letting me come up here and invade your kitchen for 2 days.
Thank you for coming. So Rob's been baking with me, so we'll have a video on that soon.
Yeah,
as well.
There'll be a video over on Zoe's channel where we are baking a bundt cake, so stay tuned for that one too. When it goes up, I'll link it below this one, or I'll go back and link it below this one.
It'll be linked somewhere.
Eventually it will all work out. And obviously we would love for Trixie to see the cake, so feel free to share it on your favourite social media platforms, tag her. And
Hi Trixie, if you are watching.
I'm sure she will be. And of course, if you would love to see more from Zoe here on my channel, then let us know down in the comments as well, because we can probably make that happen.
And I'll try and be quicker next time.
Well, to be fair, we were both incredibly slow. If you enjoyed this video, as always, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If it's your first time watching one of my videos, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will be back at some point, maybe next week, maybe not, who knows. But until then, as always, take care and happy baking.